when people say, why are you interested in psychedelics? It's like saying, why are you interested in music? Or why are you interested in sports? Like, they touch every aspect of society.
PsyDAO is a funding engine for art and science. It can encapsulate such a broad thing, and that's purposeful.
We're doing drug development. We are building a lifestyle brand. We're doing an AI multi-agent system. We are funding art, and we are doing in real life events.
The Psych NFT comes with a digital high-resolution image of a Kene fabric, and it also comes with an actual Kene fabric. So these are basically projections of consciousness, specifically the consciousness experienced by Shipibo women artists that use a plant medicine called Kene Huasta down in the Peruvian Amazon.
Having access to researchers throughout the world is so important with psychedelics because we can research DMXE, our new drug, in the Netherlands because it's not scheduled there, but it's scheduled in the United States. So we found a researcher there, and we have a connection with another country where they have different laws around different drugs. The tokens just move across these borders so easily. Art is a wonderful way to make your life better. But if we can help people to live happier, healthier, longer, more stable lives, that's ultimately where we would like to be.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome to DeSci Pilled. I am your host, Ryan Bethencourt, and super excited to have the core team at PsyDAO with us today. We're going to talk about a lot of really interesting things, as per always, because we cover crypto, science, and in this case, psychedelics. It is never any kind of advice. This is just edutainment. And we're going to be learning a lot today about psychedelics and some of the new evolutions that are happening with PsyDAO and DeSci as well. All right, Tyler, I was wondering if you could kind of introduce yourself and just introduce yourself to all of our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Tyler Quigley. I am the science and deal flow lead at PsyDAO. I have a background in neuroscience and intellectual property. I got my chops studying honeybee neuroscience at Arizona State University, and quickly became aware of the inefficiencies in academia, which ultimately led me to finding DeSci and wanting to contribute to this space.
Awesome. When did you join PsyDAO?
Yeah, so I joined PsyDAO pretty early on in its evolution. It was started back in late 2021, early 2022, right when some of the first DAOs were being created by Molecule. And I was in and out for a little bit as I finished up my PhD, but I started here contributing regularly and then full time starting in this past summer, so summer 2024 and into now.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Reilly, could you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, so I'm Reilly Capps. I have been writing about psychedelics for about 10 years. And that was for newspapers and magazines, from the Washington Post to Double Blind, which is a awesome psychedelic publication. And been involved with PsyDAO for a few years and working for them for 6 months or maybe 9 months. And I do content and organizing. So happy to be here.
And Rod, what got you so interested in psychedelics? Because you've been writing about psychedelics for a while, right?
It was the same thing that everybody gets interested in, which is you get one-shotted into it. A big dose of ayahuasca 20 years ago that made me think this is as interesting as climbing a mountain, or if you'd never seen a movie before and you're like, oh my God, how come nobody told me about this? I have to talk about this.
And by the way, that the one shot in Reilly, it's gotten really famous. I'm sure you're familiar with this. So Mark Andreessen has been on Twitter, on X, complaining about being founders who one shot themselves. And so they basically go, whoa, the nature of reality is not what I thought it to be. Screw the SaaS business. I'm off to.
Yeah, he said that they're quitting their startups so that they can go and start retreats. And that was 1,000% me 20 years ago, where I was like, I got to change my whole life because of this.
And so what?
And I kind of did.
Yeah. So how did you change your life? Because there's some of our viewers maybe have never taken psychedelics. I mean, I know many have. So a lot of people kind of find this space through psychedelics. But
yeah, it became incredibly important for me to just write about it all the time. And so I went from writing about a bunch of different things like town council and development and sports and and business and all these other things to just exclusively writing about psychedelics and cannabis, because there were such amazing stories. And 15 years ago, they were not getting told because it was illegal. There just wasn't that famous yet. Like ayahuasca was this really underground thing. And so it was, again, like finding something a diamond on the ground that no one had seen. It felt like not enough people knew about. And so I stopped writing about town council altogether and just started writing about DMT.
And how have you found things have changed since then? Because I mean, when you first started, it was still very out there, right? It wasn't a concept that people were really embracing.
Yeah, it was. And now it's like super mainstream. People are almost tired of it now. Like, in 2007, when I first did ayahuasca, it was like people didn't know how to pronounce it. No one had ever heard of it. No one knew where it was or how to do it. And now it's almost like you're sick of it. Like certain people can be sick of it, where it's like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is talking about ayahuasca again. When is that guy going to get a clue and shut up? And so it's a lot more nuanced. It's gone from like, hey guys, there's this thing that you've never heard about, like going to a movie or like climbing a mountain. Like there's this gigantic thing you don't know about, to an extremely nuanced conversation about what are the potential upsides, the potential downsides. How much should capitalism be involved? How much should medicine be involved? How much should we just decriminalize versus how much should we make people have guides? All of these things are incredibly nuanced now, and they require really long conversations. And that's part of what we're doing at PsyDAO, is trying to have a really intelligent, really long conversation about the best way to use these things, looking at them from every angle, upsides, downsides, AI, indigenous, drug development, all these things. It's so multifaceted. When people say, why are you interested in psychedelics? It's like saying, why are you interested in music? Or why are you interested in sports? Like they touch every aspect of society, from psychology to business to all of these things that are just super important. And I just feel like they're a way to talk about life, and they're a way to talk about what it means to be human and what is a good human life, and how do we improve human life, and what can make human life go poorly. And so it's just a wonderful lens through which to examine and approach the human condition.
And kind of linking in with this, I mean, the golden era of psychedelics was what, 60s and 70s? That's kind of when there was kind of a renaissance, right? In terms of exploration and growing. And then we went through these many decades of stagnation, right? Where it was like, I mean, I still remember the era, and I grew up in that era in the US, where it's like, don't do drugs, it'll fry your brain, right? And it was literally an egg frying, and it was just like, you touch this stuff, your brain is gone. And, I personally grew up with that, right? I was like, oh God, psychedelics are going to fry my brain, and I'm just going to be this hippie that just gives up life and lives by the river, right? And it took me a really long time to approach psychedelics with a new eye, right? And, we're now seeing, in terms of science, and I'm sure this is what led to PsyDAO, we're seeing the amount of incredible benefits it has for humanity, right? And I would love to hear like some of the newer benefits. We're now starting to see a drive for legalization, just like we saw with cannabis, right? I think Colorado was the first state that kind of legalized or decriminalized psychedelics. I'm glad they did. Last time I was in Colorado, weirdly, I'm vegan. I was at a steak house. My boss really wanted to go to a steak house, different boss for different company. And we went to the steakhouse, and I was eating salad, and the guy who was serving us, I was like, look, I love mushrooms. I'm into them. And he was like, oh, I got your hookup, and so everyone in Colorado seems to be part of that era, of that movement that's starting to happen. So would love to hear from both of you, like, what's this renaissance? Like, what's starting to happen with psychedelics?
Yeah, we certainly had some sort of renaissance in the 60s and 70s. That's the time that a lot of people associate with the burgeoning of psychedelics into the mainstream cultural zeitgeist. But I'd argue that we're going through another sort of renaissance right now because of the new eye on the science that's happening in research labs and through companies. But the science has been happening since that earlier renaissance. I think that like the human thirst for understanding the universe and themselves is inescapable. And while all of us that grew up in the DARE era, for instance, were learning that drugs were bad, there were people that were experimenting with all sorts of compounds and posting information about their experiences online on the internet. And this is at the same time that like the early cyberpunk movement was happening, the grassroots of what would become the crypto industry was happening. And people were on the internet as well, sharing information about psychedelics that eventually led to a lot of the ideas and the intellectual property even that you see being grabbed up by companies and other organizations now. Yeah, there's a connection between the two renaissances that we're having. And in the middle was decentralized science happening without what we now call DeSci. It was literally people taking substances, collecting data about what their experience was, and then sharing it online. We now have AI, and we have LLMs that can analyze these trip reports and extract information from them. We want that to happen, but we want the people that are generating the data to be rewarded for it. And that's, gets to the core of what PsyDAO is a community-led effort to generate information about psychedelics, but in a way that value flows in the directions that it should.
Yeah. And Tyler, I absolutely love the idea of, you're exactly right. Like I remember that era, the Silk Road era. Now it's kind of timely that Rolf Ulbricht has been freed. I think he was talking at the Bitcoin conference, but that was really when I became a mainstream accessibility to psychedelics, right? It was on Silk Road. I remember people telling me, oh, you can buy mushrooms or whatever else, acid on Silk Road. And so the cypherpunk movement and the psychedelic renaissance are really tied together very tightly.
Yeah, they are. And they're tied in words too. I think it was Timothy Leary who said that the computer is the next LSD. And there's a reason he said that. And he said that at a time when the computer was associated with a very different type of internet than what we now associate with Web 2, where everything's cordoned off into mega corporations, social media, search engines, and et cetera. The early computer and the early internet was very similar to what we're aiming for with Web 3. And so when Timothy Leary said, the computer is the next LSD, I think he meant that what we're building now is the next LSD for humanity at large, in the way that it decentralizes and connects us.
It's kind of mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. I mean, we've been on this journey, with the podcast with DeSci Pilled, we've been on this journey to really understand, like, what is DeSci, right? A lot of people are like, well, what is it? And it's many things, right? And, if you could tell, like, our listeners and our watchers, what is PsyDAO? Because I've noticed that these decentralized communities are really fascinating because they have their own lives and their own communities, their own people and their own experimenters. And there's this beautiful test in chaos, right?
Yeah, I mean, and we can feel like that too, because one of the things about psychedelics that tends to happen to people is that they get interested in a lot of things. It opens their minds to a lot of different aspects of life. So we have people coming to us literally every week with new ideas and I'll just list some of our biggest projects. Like, we're doing drug development. We are building a lifestyle brand. We're doing an AI multi-agent system. We are funding art, and we are doing in real life events. And each one of those things is a different group of people that come to us to talk about, I need to fulfill this vision of mine and no one else can do it. Sometimes it's like no one else can do it. Sometimes it's like, this is just the best way to do it. And so it's just been very exciting. We have, I think, 900 token holders. And those are people that have bought our token, which has funded our DAO, which has allowed us to make all these grants and the investments. And basically we happened on Discord, where people are talking about consciousness and the drug that they like, and indigenous perspectives and legalization and music and all this kind of stuff. So it is a lot. It's a lot going on. It's really fun.
Yeah, it is a lot. And we do have people coming to us all the time with new ideas. And I think that what the answer that you give to what is PsyDAO depends on the audience. We're going to Psychedelic Science in Denver in June, so in a couple weeks now. And we have a very different answer to what PsyDAO is to people that don't know about Web3 but do know about psychedelics than what we might tell someone that does know about DeSci but doesn't know about psychedelics or psychedelic research. But ultimately, like, PsyDAO is a funding engine for art and science. And art and science is such a broad, or it can encapsulate such a broad thing, and that's purposeful because we really want people to take advantage of the fact that psychedelics do inspire. You may be inspired by them. you might have an idea for a project that can be synergistic with the community of projects that we're incubating, and you can come to us for funding, garner community support if there is such a thing exists for your project, and access funds in a way and build something in collaboration with a larger city of ideas.
I just find what you guys are doing is so exciting and interesting, because I keep thinking back to, I'm a scientist, I'm a biologist, and I keep thinking back to the fact that ancient cavemen and women were found with like little bags full of like dried mushrooms and things like that. And so it makes me wonder, like, how ancient is our link to psychedelics? Like, how much of our civilization do we have psychedelics to thank for the creative ideas and the art? And honestly, I believe that even computers themselves, was it the bicycles of the mind, as Steve Jobs used to say, like, probably a lot of that, of like computer and computer science, we have to thank psychedelics for, at least inspiring, different perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, it even spans species, because jaguars in the jungle will eat the ayahuasca vine. And there's no reason for them to be eating a vine that doesn't give them nutrition. And
I actually did not know that. Fascinating. Yeah. So they're getting high what happened? Are they just...
So what the indigenous people will tell you is that the vine is what gives you the contact with nature. And through the influence of this vine, ayahuasca vine, then you can have a better picture of what's going on in nature. So we don't know, but it's possible that they think that they can have better vision or understand things better. That's why humans do it.
I mean, I know many of my friends who've taken ayahuasca. I have not. I have taken psychedelics. I think that they are an important part of understanding our perception of reality, right? It's a very powerful shamanic medicine. I respect it a lot. But I know that, often they'll call it the healing mother, and they feel very connected with the forest and the environment. And that's something that I think all of us care deeply about: the natural environment, the animals, the plants, the areas we so often like neglect in our modern lives, but are just still so important. I think most of us still feel a very deep connection with the land and the animals and the plants. And so,
yeah. And then like you were saying too, it goes, and what Ty was saying, then it goes to the computer, because a lot of the earliest people who were developing and inventing our current computer infrastructure, the current tech industry, were doing LSD. Steve Jobs famously said that it helped him come up with ideas. He said Microsoft would have been a better company if Bill Gates had tried LSD, which is true. I mean, Microsoft is an incredibly boring platform. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. And Apple is sublime, at least the Apple of Jobs' era, right? Fascinating. So why don't we start with a journey through art first and then go into science? So we'd love to find out. I know we were talking earlier about the Kaya Life platform and the NFT art, the physical and NFT art. We'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, this is really the root of our DAO, and as well as our governance structure. One of the things that distinguishes PsyDAO from other DeSci DAOs is that we have our native Psy token, but we also have a membership NFT that's soul bound, and it's associated with a real world asset. The NFT, the Psych NFT, comes with a digital high resolution image of a Kene fabric, and it also comes with an actual Kene fabric. And the Kene fabric is what you see behind me here, and you can see it behind Reilly as well. These are fabrics that are woven.
Reilly, could you hold it up for us?
Yeah, perfect.
Just so that we can, yeah, there we go. Perfect. Beautiful.
Yeah, so these are basically projections of consciousness, specifically the consciousness experienced by Shipibo women artists that use a plant medicine called Kenehuasta down in the Peruvian Amazon. And what they do is they harvest this river grass that has a mutualism with the fungi from the Boulangia family. And somewhere in the synergy between this river grass and the Boulangia fungus is produced something that induces some sort of hallucination, some sort of subjective experience for these artists. And they trace these patterns and weave them into fabrics called Kene. So anyway, our Psych NFT comes with this Kene fabric, and that art is really what drives a lot of the outlets for our action. Sorry, skipped over my words there a little bit. No problem. So this is the first sort of project that we funded, was funding a proposal to elevate and license this art out into the world. So through that, we're building a cafe down in the Peruvian Amazon where the Shipibo community will be able to serve coffee. This is a place that's right there on the ayahuasca circuit. People that go down for retreats will stop by. They'll get to learn about Kene more deeply after kind of experiencing it in the art that was surrounded them during their experience. And they'll also get connected in with our e-commerce shop where we'll be having products that are made with Kene art on them, but we'll also serve as a licensing platform for companies and brands who might want to use Shipibo art for their own products. All 20% of the royalties from any sales that we make, any licensing deals that we make, will go directly back to the tribe as well. So we're creating basically a value flow back into the Peruvian Amazon through PsyDAO, through this governance structure, helping elevate the artists who are creating value out of poverty and creating a system for them where they can operate their art and sell their art on the global market.
And I want to say, too, that we are trying to elevate psychedelic art in many spheres and in many parts of the world. So this comes from the Amazon, and this is art that they make with a plant medicine. And then we've also been working on a drug that's purely Western. And we have a researcher in the Netherlands who is doing this research on a ketamine-like substance called DMXE. It's a dissociative. And he put one of the best artists in the Netherlands onto the medicine. And then the artist came out and created art off of it. And this isn't the best way to show it to you.
And
but
we'll put a link in there. That is a stunning piece of art.
Super striking.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what he saw when he was on the medicine. And so the idea is to translate these alternate state of consciousness into art, whether that's the plant medicine of the Shipibo or the novel dissociatives of the West. Because psychedelics, you can't see it. Like, it's an internal thing. But so in order to show people what's going on, in order to communicate what's so cool about them, that's why this Kene is so cool and this art is so cool.
Yeah. And from an intellectual property standpoint as well, I mean, a lot of DeSci organizations are focused on IP. And what that means for them is patents and data. But IP is so much broader. I mean, your face is IP. This podcast is IP. Anything created by a human is IP. And so the art that's created by based off psychedelics, based off of psychedelic experiences is also IP. And that can be leveraged to generate revenue for a DAO or for a person in ways that can support science. And we can also generate revenue off science that can support art. And so we're really trying to build a more synergistic ecosystem between science and art intellectual property by creating these variable horizon revenue flows back into the DAO through various intellectual property commercialization means.
Yeah, so that really adds value, right? So that's the DeSci component, which I think a lot of people are still trying to understand. It's like, I get it, doing more science, that's great, funding science, but then there's the value generator, which is, the consumer goods, the psychedelic art, and then potentially new therapies to help people, right? In many different ways.
Exactly.
And in terms of, the dissociative, so DMXE, do you guys have like a vision of who that's going to be helping and how, if everything works out?
Yeah. So, and this is the kind of thing that I always want to bring PsyDAO back to is how is it going to help a real person in the real world? Like, I mean, art is a wonderful way to like make your life better. But if we can help people to live happier, healthier, longer, more stable lives, that's ultimately where we would like to be. DMXE, which is this drug that we're developing in the Netherlands, this Western drug, this dissociative drug, it has some unique properties that we think could be helpful to treat some indications to make people healthier that are not the things that you usually hear about in psychedelics, which people talk a lot about depression and PTSD. But this is some interesting different things. I don't know, Tyler, if you want to talk about the different thing that DMXE does.
My cat is invading the podcast.
Oh, well, we like cats. We like cats. I have my unicorn pate somewhere for cats. So,
nice.
With Wilder at the other business that I run. So, all plant-based. So
good.
I don't know if Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I was just going to say that DMXE is similar to ketamine. It's in the same family. I think that ketamine is probably the most well understood psychedelic. Sorry, I have another cat here as well.
There's tons of cats there. All right.
Yeah, I've got a lot.
See the cat. Yeah,
they're playing. This is Esme. I picked her up off the
Hello,
street.
Esme. She's
There
very
you go.
sweet. Is she
You're gonna be famous.
Is she a kitten?
She is
She
a kitten. Yeah, I just grabbed her. She's a little rascal.
Oh my goodness, she looks very sweet.
Yeah, trying to do good.
You were gonna
Yeah.
name her Psy, but
I was gonna name her Psy. Yeah, I was gonna name her Psy, but decided on Esme ultimately after seeing her personality come out. Yes. Anyway, DMXE is in the same family as ketamine. Ketamine obviously started as a horse anesthetic, often associated still with that animal. But now we know that it has a variety of beneficial effects for humans. And so DMXE is in this class. We can go after similar indications that ketamine is going after, and that's probably the lowest hanging fruit. But as Reilly said, there are some interesting other ideas out there for what this can do. It has a uniquely distinct auditory phenomenon associated with it. There's like mushrooms and LSD have a very kind of like characteristic visual aesthetic. DMXE has a very characteristic auditory aesthetic. And so there's a whole class of diseases that affect the vestibular system, so ears, balance, sound, and stuff. And so we think that there's potential here, just based off of these like preliminary subjective effects, that it could have some benefits in that area, that disease area. The researcher that's studying it also believes that there could be a benefit for social/group therapy with this compound in particular. It has a unique effect on social bonding, especially person to person within a group. And that's something we're seeing is like maybe better from all psychedelics as we get to know them more, but this one seems to be particularly useful for it. And so what we go after is still to be determined. There's lots of different areas that we could pursue. It'll ultimately come down to some preliminary evidence from the early studies that we're funding, but we definitely have high hopes for its potential in a medical aspect. But there's also a fun aspect to psychedelics that we also can't ignore, and that also has ranging benefits on the person as well, on wellness.
Yes,
yeah.
Plenty. Honestly, the creative aspects, there's so many aspects of this where sometimes we medicalize only the use of psychedelics, but actually psychedelics really are powerful for so many things, right? For vision, for creativity, and just for those watching, ketamine has become very famous because of probably its most famous user, Elon Musk. He's often seen kind of like taking a lot of ketamine, a little out there, dealing with his I don't know if it's depression or anxiety that's really been helping him. But ketamine has helped a lot of people. This is actually an FDA approved drug now for humans. And so, there's been a lot of benefits to this actual drug. And originally it was a horse tranquilizer, which is always such a trip that it was a horse tranquilizer. And now we're using it for treatment of treatment. I think it's like treatment resistant depression. Is that right? The primary indication?
Yeah. Depression is the main thing. And there are now these clinics that are popped up all around the country where you can do it, and with a guide and in a safe space. And because ketamine, like any substance that you put in your body, can hurt you. And famously, Matthew Perry just took too much ketamine and slipped into a hot tub, and no more Matthew Perry. And so, like any of these things, you got to be careful and talk to a doctor and do your research. And there's plenty online to help you figure out how much to do it, where to do it, when not to do it, if you're not stable, if you don't have a friend with you.
And that's generally a good rule of thumb, right? I mean, all psychedelics should be treated very respectfully because they're very powerful. And you should always be very, very careful if and when you use it, ideally with a professional, because now there are many professionals that can help people with psychedelic therapies. Yeah,
actually, that actually gets at another key mission of PsyDAO. The psychedelic industry and the emergence of psychedelics into the mainstream is increasing every day. I think that I see more and more mushroom imagery, more and more media focused on tripping or the benefits of psychedelics. I mean, Michael Pollan was on Oprah recently, Michael Pollan was on Oprah recently. And so once psychedelics are talked about on Oprah, you realize that there's a transition that's occurred. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be Googling psychedelics, how to use psychedelics in the coming years. And there's good information out there, but it's not always the most accessible information. And it's not always easy for a newcomer to tease apart the safe and the unsafe practices associated with psychedelics. Psychedelics, and that when I say psychedelics, I mean broadly everything from traditional psychedelics like mushrooms and acid to ketamine to MDMA, anything that you'd fall in that category, all have their own unique harm reduction practices. And so one of the things that we really want to do is be a place that people can find early on in their own psychedelic endeavors that's putting out good information, expert information for people that do want to explore. They have a community. There is a place for them to go and talk about what they experience, and a place for them to build something based off their experience if they want to. And so, yeah, another mission of PsyDAO, not only to progress psychedelic science and art, but is to progress an understanding of how to do that responsibly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of people think about psychedelics and think it's like, oh, it's this awesome ride where you see lots of things. And it's like, yeah, often. And sometimes you're going to have a bad trip and it's not a good time. And you have to be ready for the fact that it may bring up a lot of issues, internal traumas, sadness, frustration, anger, like all of these feelings in new ways that you may not be ready for, right? And it's like I've had bad trips, and when you have a bad trip, I remember coming out of one shaking because it was so scary, but it was a message that I needed to hear.
Exactly.
And so I had to process. It took me days to really process that feeling and, being lost in eternity.
And this is where the nuanced discussion that I was talking about is really helpful. There are whole websites that are dedicated to people that are having difficulty with psychedelics, who have had bad trips, who have extended problems with it. If you Google like ecstatic integration, they do a great job of talking about all the things that you can do if something goes wrong.
And I have had personal experience with a family member with psychosis, right? So after taking a psychedelic, most people don't experience psychosis, but every once in a while someone has an adverse event and they get lost. Like they really need medical help because it's very, very powerful. And so, I think for everyone watching, just be careful. Do a lot of research, ideally work with a medical professional if it's your first time, or if not, if you choose not to, make sure to check out the folks at PsyDAO or MAPS and make sure you read a lot and understand the risks and the benefits. Because some people are often, I'm sure you've come across this frequently, guys, some people may be dealing with their own depression or their own issues, and they think that, oh, great, I'll just take a psychedelic and it's gone.
Yeah, totally. Because psychedelics go in these pendulum swings where first, for a long time, we think that they are going to cure everything. Like in the 70s and late 60s, they're going to open all our minds. They're going to end the war. Utopia is coming. Then people freak out and they lose their mind and they spend too much time in some mental institutions. So they get outlawed. And then during the 80s and 90s, this pendulum swings too far back the other way. And all we're talking about is the damage and the harm and the ways that people ended up in psych institutions. Then in the early 2000s, they swung back again. And we had these great first studies that said that 2/3 of the people that do MDMA-assisted psychotherapy get rid of their PTSD diagnosis, like incredibly hopeful, happy, wonderful outcomes. And now we're kind of swinging back to maybe hopefully a more mature position. And maybe the pendulum swings are getting more truncated, and maybe we're going to go a little bit more like this from now on. And that's a big hope of mine.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So tons of potential, right? We're only just scratching the surface of where we can go. I wanted to link this with technology, right? Really, and talk about BRD a little bit. I think, we're starting to see this kind of evolution, which I find absolutely fascinating, which is now we have these decentralized science communities, people doing lots of interesting experiments, and now they're using agents. These kind of agents to try and explore different avenues for research, accelerate research. Could you tell us a little bit about the BRD project and what you're all doing with that, and maybe some interesting insights that might have popped out?
Yeah, so BRD is an autonomous research agent that we incubated at the end of 2024. It was the first IPNFT and IPTs coming out of PsyDAO. And what BRD does is it scans the literature around various topics to generate questions and hypotheses that a funding body such as PsyDAO could potentially pursue. So, for example, BRD has been spending the last few months scanning all of the available psychedelic literature out, and it's been popping up and generating hypotheses that could potentially be questions that we would want to fund as a funding agency. One of the ways in which we intend to use BR is in how we source deals for PsyDAO. So, typically researchers will propose a project to a DAO. A DAO looks at all of the projects and decides which ones they want to fund. But there's another way to do this where we put out questions that we want to fund, and then we have researchers bid to do projects on those questions. So they propose hypotheses, they propose methods of budgets, and we assess which projects we want to fund to answer the questions that the community decides are worth answering. And obviously there's lots of considerations in this direction. Like there's fundamental science where we just understand more about the world, and those can become IP tokens and eventually produce actual real hard IP. And then there's projects that have a much more direct route to IP, patents such as new molecules or new methods or compositions, etc. You don't really know in the process when IP will emerge from a project. And so we really like to spread our net pretty wide and diversifying, the stage of IP development that projects are at. But ultimately, this research agent, BR, will be able to help us hone in on new areas of psychedelic science that we can pursue uniquely as PsyDAO. And the BR is a tool that can be used by any organization. I think it was kind of one of the OG agents in the DeSci space. So it's because it's been incubated by PsyDAO, it's been focusing on psychedelic literature, but it has been scanning all of the psychedelic scientific literature out there and producing hypotheses in many different directions. And
Tyler, I love this because it's been, one of the conversations that I had with PsyDAO, right? So PsyDAO are planning on taking like old literature, so literature in French, in historic libraries, and kind of putting it all to a database, and then allowing AI to read it all. So as these agents get access to more information and their ability to just expand across the the potential white space, what are the things that they're going to see that maybe perhaps a single human or a group of humans have just missed? What are the secrets hiding in plain sight? One of Peter Thiel's favorite sayings, what are the secrets hiding in plain sight? And I think in science, there's many of them. Mm-hmm. Like we just don't know where they are or what they are. And so as BR led to anything that either Reilly or you or Tyler have been like fascinated by, where it's like, oh, that's a really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it popped up the other day that something about psychedelics and women's health and something about psychedelics and microbiome health. And so we had a Twitter space with Microbiome DAO that are exploring the gut health and the gut-brain connection. And we talked about the ways that psychedelics and the microbiome might work together. And so there's potential down the line for a study together. And same with women's health with Athena DAO. And so I just do not have the time or bandwidth to look through tens of thousands of research papers and figure out, is there a connection to, between psychedelics and gut health? But it turns out there is.
Yeah. BR also put out just today, actually, a very interesting evidence assessment about ibogaine, its interaction with an important ion in the brain and an important neuroprotective process in the brain. I won't reveal too much just in case it is something that we end up pursuing, but I was genuinely shocked. I mean, I'm always shocked at the products of AI coming from the time before AI, but the report that it gave us was like, I wish I had something like this early in my PhD, because the breadth at which it can assess areas of research and connect processes and potential treatments in ways that are unique but also understudied, and have that context of the fact that it hasn't been pursued, it can result in intellectual property, it can pursue in a research project is really fascinating. And so, yeah, we don't have an ibogaine study on the docket quite yet, but maybe the first one would be from BR here.
Fascinating. And in terms of just speculating, taking us beyond even PsyDAO, we're entering into a new era, and Tyler, you mentioned it yourself. We now have AIs that are starting to come up with new hypothesis or new thesis. We are 1 to 2 years into the AI revolution. It's nothing, right? We're literally scratching the surface of AI and we're now starting to see these AI agent or, AI scientists, agent scientists. Where can we go? DeSci plus these AI agents plus liquid capital to fund these projects. Have you guys thought about this? Have you speculated about where we're going? Not where we are today, but where we're going, because DeSci is bound to become a massive space. It's just hard. There's so many evolutions and permutations around it. It's hard to almost like project where are we going and how.
I think one of the things that really is advantageous about DeSci is the fluidity and the liquidity of tokens, how quickly we can deploy capital. Like when we have an idea, we run it through our community and we can send money out to the researcher in weeks. It's crazy. And spin up a token to raise money like in 2 days. And it's just been so cool to watch that happen. And so there's just so little friction now to funding science with this DeSci paradigm, with these tokens that just move so fast. And yeah, Tyler?
Yeah, I think we're headed to a place where people are funding science and they're also having a say in where their funds go. I mean, we already kind of do decentralized science by paying taxes. We pay taxes. It goes to the NSF and the NIH, and then a group of researchers who's been selects which of the grant proposals that have been submitted get funded. And that's really just like a national level DeSci organization. But the people that are giving the money, us, the taxpayers, we don't have a say. We're not electing the people that are vetting the projects. We're not electing the people who are running the agencies, et cetera. So, imagine if we could, though. Imagine if, you paid your taxes and then you got something in the mail that said, which of those projects do you think is most beneficial? Obviously we can't trust, not that we can't trust, but obviously we need expert opinions and we need expert reviews and all that stuff. And that's part of a deal flow process. But ultimately, I think we're headed to a place where the science is democratized in and of its own self rather than is something that just is a product of a democracy at like a government level.
Yeah.
And another thing about PsyDAO and about DeSci that is so cool and novel is that we can be global and we can find the opportunities wherever they are. And this is why I think Paul Kohlhaas, who was the founder of BIOS, a founding member of PsyDAO, one of the things he saw is the ways that having access to researchers throughout the world is so important with psychedelics, because like we can research DMXE, our like new drug, in the Netherlands because it's not scheduled there, but it's scheduled in the United States. So we found a researcher there, and we have a connection with another country where they have different laws around different drugs. We're working with people in Peru where they have different laws, and the tokens just move across these borders so easily. That is just so great to see these things happening at all these different levels and all these different places where it makes sense.
I was going to say, one of the other cool things about PsyDAO is that by being a Psy holder, you have access to opportunities to farm IPTs, just like how they farmed lots of tokens in DeFi summer. We're setting up our own system where Psy holders are actually being emitted rewards from the projects themselves. And so we're immediately decentralizing the ownership and the governance rights over the intellectual property that we're funding to the community that's invested in PsyDAO itself. And I think, as far as I know, we're the only DeSci organization where you can stake your DeSci token for IPT rewards. But it's something we're experimenting with, not only to bring Psy more utility, but to reward the members that are in the DAO, voting, participating, contributing their voice. And I think that this gives us a degree of closeness that is really valuable. People feel more in a community, more WAGMI vibes, I'd say, when we're all kind of being emitted and holding these tokens and governing and producing science together.
Yeah, the evolution of where you're going is going to be fascinating, right? Because it's hard to even predict, like, are some of your members going to actually kind of take the IPTs going forward and help develop companies? And like, you can just see how people feel passionate about multiple different things, as you mentioned before, and it allows science to be anarchic again, right? Like unpredictable. Like it moves, one of the things at IndieBio, so I co-founded IndieBio. It's a biotech accelerator in San Francisco. I think it's still the largest biotech accelerator now in San Francisco and New York. And one of the things that we learned, and this was the hypothesis that we originally had when we started the accelerator, was there's so much great science hidden underneath the bureaucracy.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, there were all of these, at the time, it was these PhD students and these postdocs who could never get the grants. They could never get funding. It was always what their professors wanted to do. What if you could free them? then you apply that to a much broader base. It's like, hey, how about not just the PhDs and postdocs in specific universities, specific regions, but everyone around the world? And like, how many great ideas are out there that have not had the ability to get funding? Brilliant people that have not had the ability to get funding, that have brilliant concepts or ideas that they want to develop. Probably thousands, tens of thousands out there.
Exactly.
That we haven't yet found, right? And so PsyDAO is kind of a roving machine looking for those opportunities with liquid capital when it arrives, bang, to help create those opportunities and those therapies, those projects that just wouldn't exist in any other way.
Exactly.
And it blows my mind to think about that at scale. What does that mean? How quickly can we accelerate? How quickly can science accelerate? And so I think, and Paul talks about this a lot, that we're going to see this category. I think we're under $1 billion, right? Market cap under $1 billion. Just 100xing it is $100 billion, and that's I think it's it's the top 10 pharma, the top 20 pharma. That's it. And we're talking about all of science. And I'm often reminded when I talk to people about DeSci, it's not just about the biological sciences or psychedelics. It's all sciences, robotics, physics, chemistry, astrophysics. We're only just beginning this journey. And the interplay, Reilly, as you mentioned, between the different DeSci DAOs, I've already seen it. The interplay between DeSci DAO and peptide DAO, or they interact, or your interplay with Athena DAO, or microbiome DAO. There's just going to be more and more of those.
Yeah, because there's just so little friction. Like I was saying, what specific project are you most excited about?
Me personally?
Yeah.
So one of them. There's one that has a very that I love, and I love it because it's just so different. I don't fully know where it's going, but it's pump.science. Benji basically told me, hey, I want to take science and make it fun. So people want to take part in science and then be part of it. It's had a pretty bumpy ride, right? I would say it's had a.
I love watching the rats.
Running around, and are the worms alive? Are they dead? And then it's oh, this is a rug, because they previously, the first run of it, they previously recorded it, and then people are this is a rug, this isn't real. Yeah. But watching this, I saw how many people it engaged that I would say would never be interested in talking about science or being engaged in science in any way. And they were this is really weird. We're watching worms move around and using AI to track them and see if it extends lifespan. And it kind of blew my mind, because I was where can this go? And so, we're now looking at a decentralized CRO, right? So when you look at it, they're going to launch another, I think 20 compounds or something like that, and test the effects on lifespan. Some of the compounds are already known, have already been tested. It's going to be interesting, but not, it's not going to be mind blowing. But then what about these IP NFTs? I think DAO is doing a couple of projects. Where else could we take this concept of truly decentralized CRO?
It's fun.
It's fun.
I just think it's so exciting. So much of science, psychedelic science is a black box, where you look at these companies and they're trying this compound that you've never heard of, and they're giving it to people you can't see with results that are coming in 3 years. And here they're giving these medicines to these flies, and they're either flying or they're not. And
they're dying off. And
so
they're
fun.
And you see the death curve, right? It's just, they're naturally dying. Anyone that's worried about cruelty to flies or to worms, they literally give them the compounds and then check when they naturally die, right?
Yeah. And so it's possible to do this with psychedelics. We could have DMXE and ketamine and kenewaste, and we could give it to mice and see which ones run the maze the best, and we could tokenize. It'd be so fun.
Well, Reilly, it's Alex Shulgin already did this. Alex Shulgin is a psychedelic researcher and chemist from who worked throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s developing entire libraries of tryptamines and phenethylamines. And he would basically develop a new compound and test it on him and his friends and his wife, and they would collect data. And so they basically, again, you have a very decentralized science type thing happening out in the wild before anyone even put the two words together and called it a crypto company, of people making a new compound, testing out the effects of it, hypothesizing about its benefits for humanity and compiling it in a book and putting it on the internet and letting anyone read it. And so these libraries are out there. And one of the projects that we're exploring, I guess, I don't want to call it alpha, but one of the projects that we really, really want to get going is a platform where we would basically do a decentralized distributed CRO development of these large libraries of psychedelics that are out there. So it's not like we're gaining the intellectual property of the compound itself, but there's so much science that has yet to be done on a lot of these compounds. Just one of them has to change people's lives, and we'll achieve
100%.
Right. Don't you think it would be fun if we took the whole library of Shulgin compounds, of which there are hundreds, set up some mice on some mazes and see which one they're able to complete the maze best and bet on?
Some might say it's been talked about.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, there's some alpha on that, like some psychedelic. I love this idea of like a decentralized CRO, finding new indications, because I remember I had a friend of mine that she was doing psilocybin to treat her headaches. Like she would get migraines, really bad migraines, and her migraine medicine really wasn't doing it fully for her. She started taking psilocybin and the migraines went away. Right? Like how many examples of other things that really are life changing for people in a negative way could we get data in a decentralized CRO and then actually help them with real data? It's like, hey, 1,000 people did this. This was their protocol. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. You know, this is the milligrams of psilocybin that helped them, or whatever. Right?
Yeah, and that's a perfect example where the people were doing this around the world, treating their cluster headaches with mushrooms, but they didn't know about it. And then the internet comes around the late 90s and they find each other. Mm-hmm. And so many people's lives have been improved.
Yeah, there's an organization called Cluster Busters that is an organization for cluster headaches. And I was at a conference in Madison, Wisconsin, and had someone from that organization speak. Absolutely mind-blowing. The immediate effect that psilocybin has on cluster headaches.
Amazing.
Insane.
And that's the kind of thing that's been tested now and validated. But think about all the other things with psychedelics that have not been validated. All of these things that people have suggested over the years, like, oh, it helps my vision or hurts my vision, or it helps my this, it helps or hurts my that. And yeah, to try to get better data on which one of these are signal and which one's noise, it's like super exciting.
Amazing. All right. Well, Reilly and Tyler, thank you so much for joining us on DeSci Pilled. Very excited about PsyDAO. If people want to learn more about PsyDAO, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah. So real quickly, I just want to let everyone know that we have 3 proposals through our deal flow pipeline that are coming up for a vote, mostly in June. I might leak into July as well. Information about us, what we're doing there, can be found in our Discord in the Psy Holders channel. You'll have to verify Psy Holdings to get access to that channel to join the discussion on those projects. But for more information, like come into the Discord, go to PsyDAO.com or .io and read up about our projects and just talk to people. Come talk to me or Reilly, anyone else in the DAO that you see us participating, and we'll get you up to speed really quickly.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate having you on DeSci Pilled and looking forward to hopefully future discussions about your interesting projects and evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome.